You're sending emails because you need more revenue, you need more top of funnel, you need more pipeline, and understanding why you are doing what you're doing will then enable you to ask better questions to help people actually achieve the goal, right? The switch happens when you go from being somebody tells you their solution and you implement the solution to somebody tells you the solution and you stop them and you're like, that's a great idea, but I want to hear your problem first. You are not just like the button puncher, you are the problem solver. And when you can start to recognize that somebody has done your job for you in terms of developing the solution, and then you can walk them back from that to like, no, man, back it up. Like, I get you want to send an email, but like, why do you want to send an email? What are you hoping to achieve? In a lot of cases, sometimes the email is the best idea, sometimes it's not, sometimes there's like a hybrid approach there. And this kind of applies across the board of helping people actually solve their problems. And then over time, the more problems you solve, it just sort of compounds on itself, right?
Hey everyone, today we have Alysha Khan. She's an AI strategist at allGood, the creator of the world's first AI marketing ops employee. She has been having an incredible journey with 3 times Adobe Marketer Champion and a very regular voice at MOps conference every year. Over the past 8 years, she has worked with fast-moving B2B as well as a lot of agency teams, cleaning up the messy tech stacks, speeding up the campaign delivery, and the build systems that actually connect marketing activities to real revenue impact. What makes Alysha stand out is the mix of strategy and hands-on execution. I'm so excited and passionate to have her on our podium today. She's the person everyone calls when things are in chaos, when it comes to data being inconsistent and telling you all the different stories. At times, clients introduce her as she's the one who doesn't just fix the system, but she brings the whole team along with her. And I think such an incredible statement, because the world we live in, it's not about just technology and system. It's also about people and how do we align everyone towards common goal and bring them along the journey towards the success. So today's conversation, we are super excited to talk more about building scalable marketing ops foundation. How do we leverage and design better tech stacks, workflow, and turning strategy into like real execution.
Yeah.
So without further delay, Alysha, welcome, and really looking forward to have an interesting session and your insight from your amazing journey over the last decade.
Absolutely. Very kind words. I don't know if I'm the person everybody calls, but I definitely have jumped into quite a few fire drills over the course of the last 8 or so years.
Yeah, and especially last 3 or 4 years has been very interesting from a marketing ops landscape perspective. Mm-hmm. There are so many tech stacks.
Yes.
Everyone wants to adopt technology, bring in different tech stacks, but then the bigger problem statement is always that how do they consolidate? How do they link up to bring that single customer view or bring that real insight rather than getting those noise around all the various data points and different tech stacks. So let's get started. For me to start with, mostly first to focus on building scalable and aligned operations team. You have a great journey and a lot of exposure towards that. So help me understand your journey of evolving from executor to advisor. And what daily habits has helped you to be successful in that transition, and what recommendation and advice you provide all those marketers who want to transition from just being an executor, ticket taker to that advisory role.
Absolutely. So I think the number one thing folks need to think about is as they are doing the tickets and as they're doing the execution, how does the work that I am doing tie into the business goals and business metrics, right? Because you're not just sending emails. You're sending emails because you need more revenue, you need more top of funnel, you need more pipeline, et cetera, et cetera. And understanding why you are doing what you're doing will then enable you to ask better questions and slowly start to use your, I call it marketing ops like muscles or marketing ops common sense to help people actually achieve the goal, right? Because the switch happens when you go from being somebody tells you their solution and you implement the solution to somebody tells you the solution and you stop them and you're like, that's a great idea, but I want to hear your problem first, right? You are not just like the button puncher, you are the problem solver. And when you can start to recognize that somebody has done your job for you in terms of developing the solution, and then you can walk them back from that to like, no, man, back it up. Like, I get you want to send an email, but like, why do you want to send an email? What are you hoping to achieve? And in a lot of cases, sometimes the email is the best idea. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's like a hybrid approach there. And this kind of applies across the board of helping people actually helping people actually solve their problems.
Yeah.
And then over time, the more problems you solve, it just sort of compounds on itself, right? Then you get to bring that experience to the next group of stakeholders, the next group of clients, and be like, oh, yes, that problem, I've seen that before. And, this is what worked, this is what didn't work. And I think the other piece is developing that, like, I call it systems thinking, where you have to understand how all the pieces play together, right? And I think this is also a hard leap for people to make from like a junior marketing ops person to sort of evolving up in their career is you are not just pressing the buttons or building the workflows for the sake of building the workflows. There's a reason you are trying to convince the system to do what you're trying to convince it to do, right? And understanding the upstream effects, the downstream effects, the sideways effects. Once you can also wrap your head around those pieces, that is also going to up-level your problem-solving skills. So you're not just like, yes, to solve your problems, I will press the buttons A, B, and C. It's, to solve your problems, we need to get system A and system B to talk together. And we need a workflow to digest the data and all this other stuff needs to happen because then you're starting to focus on the scalability of your problem solving and not just like duct taping this immediate need, but like somebody else down the line is absolutely going to have the same problem. How do you fix it for now and for the future?
Yeah, so true, so true. I think that context, having that right context and clarity is so important.
Yes.
So that you kind of You don't solve it just for solving for today. You also have that visibility and context of how it's gonna shape up in future.
Yes.
Either with scale or tomorrow when you're gonna bring in multiple ecosystems together.
Yeah. And I think to that point, this is where the revenue, like understanding your revenue metrics is really important, right? Because that also gives you that other piece of context of, is this, and because sometimes there are like one-off things where you're like, you know what, dude, I'm just going to give you what you want so I can focus on the actual revenue generating activities. And then other times, if you can identify like, oh wait, no, this idea, this is an A+ idea, and it's going to actually impact our metrics, you can then start to invest more time in that and, better use of your time overall.
And I think in whatever limited exposure I have, I think it brings you, it makes your seat on the table so full and so valuable.
Yes.
Nor you're not like easily replaceable because you're not just performing a task or you're not just solving what they expect you to do.
Yes.
You have that better context and that all the connecting dots to the ultimate success or metrics to the business. So whatever activities, campaigns, emails, value addition you bring on table, it has a larger share of voice in the overall success of the business.
And this is also, you're bringing up a great point because one thing I tell a lot of junior folks is that when marketing is doing its strategy planning, operations needs to be in the room absolutely every time because marketing is going to scheme their schemes. They may be good schemes, they may be bad schemes, but when operations is in the room, you can ground it in what's real, what's feasible, what's doable in the given timeline, in your budget, in your tech stack, whatever, right? Because If marketing is dreaming up a direct mail campaign and you don't have a direct mail platform, that's a very different scenario than like you already have a direct mail platform and you have the context and the data and everything, right? So being in the room when those decisions are made is so incredibly important.
Yeah, so true. So very true. Moving on, when it comes to designing ops workflows that prevent firefighting,
Yes.
we have a large operations team and either like how those firefighting situations can be. So would love to know your take on what did that setup look like in practice to avoid those all firefighting in a most preventive way.
So the first thing I'm going to tell everybody is QA. Like, honest to God, it doesn't, I'm not going to have about launching campaigns. Even like big implementations, integrations, everything, you should have a QA phase where you test that sucker from top to bottom.
Okay.
Because pausing to do that will honestly save you a lot of headache. And that QA should also really be conducted by somebody who's a little bit removed from the day-to-day work, right? Because they will have that fresh perspective that you as the builder, architect, strategist, like you've been in the weeds. There's just no way for you to it's just harder for you to take a step out and be like neutrally look at like, does this make sense?
Yeah.
Because I've had builds where there was like logic where it was like in a smart list versus not in a smart list.
Okay.
And I swear to God, if somebody else had looked at it, they would have pretty immediately been like, Alysha, that's wrong. Like, there's no scenario in which this is right the way that it is. I'm like, I don't even need to know what you're doing to know that like what you have here is wrong. And then I think the other thing when it comes to triaging and firefighting, it's making sure you take time to actually assess the problem, right? Because I think from what I've seen, a lot of teams, and I'm actually JK, I'm guilty of this too, is you jump right into trying to solve the problem without understanding what the problem is. And this kind of goes back to my earlier point of, you have to know what the problem is. Because just because somebody in marketing or sales says something is broken does not mean it is actually broken, right? It may be that they don't understand how it's supposed to work. It may be that like a fun one is like, hey, the form fill does not immediately get into Salesforce. You need to like give it a hot minute, right? They just haven't waited long enough. There is like an update in progress. They're kind of caught in the middle of, and then sometimes things are actually broken, right? There's like every spectrum of issues. So when somebody says, hey, I have a problem, you need to verify the problem actually exists. And then from there, I think it's important teams keep track of recurring problems because that then feeds your roadmap of the stuff you actually got to fix versus like communication issues, which like then maybe you need more training enablement with your team versus like the random one-off stuff we all run into where you're like, well, that was just weird. I don't know why that happened. I'm going to fix it for you, but like, sorry, dude. And then also, I think the last piece, and it's like being good partners, right? It's being really good about communicating with your stakeholders that like, yes, we have seen you have an issue and we're looking into it, right? Even if you don't actually get to looking into it for another day or so, that open line of communication so people feel heard gives you as the marketing ops person a ton more leeway to build that relationship and have some of those conversations of like, you're actually kind of wrong about this, but you have the relationship to say it nicely to them and they can take that feedback from you and like, you can iterate on like, is it the documentation that was unclear? Is the training that's unclear? Is the dashboard just kind of like set up in a confusing way? So something that I harp on all the time is like, you have to make friends. You have to make professional friends. You have to get people to at least somewhat like you, because that will take you very far in life.
Any examples you'd like to share about is setting up the Workfront, Asana, or any of other project management systems ahead of the time?
Yes.
Avoid those like last minute delays,
That's just
reactive state of mind, because like usually you tend to make mistakes in that phase because everything happens in a very awkward situation in an unplanned way. So any specific examples you may share, any best practices around that?
So if you have a team that likes to send things in super last minute, what I like to tell people is that the minute you think this might be a thing, I want you to send a ticket to me, right? I don't care if I have to delete the ticket later or archive the ticket later, but the minute there's even an inkling of a thought, you have a last minute request, I want you to put it on my radar, because then I can stay on top of it with you and stay and keep up with it and make sure that I am low key planning for the capacity for that in case it happens, right? Then the other thing is just because you think it's an emergency does not mean it is actually an emergency. And being kind of upfront with marketers about hey, we have an SLA, right? And then again, it's not really a project management tool thing, but you tell marketers, hey, we have a 3-day SLA for emails, and there's a reason for that SLA, right? It is to give us time to build. It is to give you time to review the email. It's to give us time to then QA the build, right? SLAs are not just numbers we make up out of thin air, right? There are reasons the SLA is what it is. And it's because we're trying to do really good work for you, right? And a lot of people are very receptive to that messaging when you explain to them. And then just being clear that hey, when we move really, really fast, you are more prone to errors, right? I've literally told that to people, can we send an email in 24 hours? Yes. Do I recommend it? And can I guarantee the quality of that email? No, definitely no.
But
Yeah, we can try. We will try our very best. But if something goes sideways, this is me telling you now that I'm sort of waving my hands, washing my hands of a potential mess here, right? Yeah. And then in your project management tool also, then just sort of going back to that piece specifically, making, and this is where little things matter, right? Is when people submit a due date in your intake form, I always label that field as requested due date. And then there's a line there that says marketing ops has the final say on all deadlines, right? Because that then it is not set in stone, ma'am, just because you put it in a form in a ticket somewhere. Read the fine print very much says marketing ops will approve the deadline depending on capacity, right? And then for really high volume teams, getting into sprint planning really helps, because then you are sort of really boxing in your capacity, right? Of how much work you can take in. And then that also lets you say to people, hey, I can take your last minute request, but out of this list, something's got to budge, right? So you got to go figure out what's got to budge out of this list. I'll give you some recommendations, but there is a finite amount of work that can get done. So if you have an emergency, that's fine, but that means things have to shift.
Yeah, I think that's where, because at times it's so sensitive. We are dealing with large set of subscriber data. The emails to be breaches to possibly hundreds and thousands of millions of people in that inbox, right? An error happens and the send button's been hit. There is no way you can go reverse or start run it there.
There's no take backsies on it. But this is where there's a saying that's slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That's the that is what people who send emails you need to put that on your wall in front of you, right? And that's a mistake that I found myself making, is when I am going too fast, I make mistakes, right? There is definitely a speed limit I have to put on myself of if you go past the speed limit, Alysha, you will make dumb mistakes and dumb mistakes for no good reason, right? So slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And QA, honest to God, you should QA all your builds. And that will help a ton with getting those errors, cutting that rate all the way down.
Doesn't matter how many times you have done it in the past. I think at the end of the day, we all are humans. Likely you have some oversights. So I think having that QA just before, thorough QA before the send on Amtrak, we all have realized how much we can save as a result of that.
Absolutely.
Great. But I take that away. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Smooth is fast. Yep.
Amazing. Now comes to reinventing or kind of setting up the center of excellence team.
Yes.
In your journey, you have set up center of excellence for so many large SaaS clients and security brands. Would love to know that there's always a perceived notion that when you try to set a lot of rules, business, things can possibly slow down.
Yes.
I'd love to know from your experience how setting up those center of excellence team has actually helped you. Was it kind of you end up doing things at speed, or has it actually slowed down a lot of stuff which you're trying to knock off as an operations team?
So process is generally a good thing. Let's start there. Process, and when I say process, actually, I may sort of clarify myself. The key part of a center of excellence is really the intake step, right? A lot hinges on getting requests into your queue and vetting requests so that way they make sense. Because so much of ops' time is spent spinning wheels because people weren't clear about what they wanted in the first place, right? So in this case, so much of it comes down to training and enablement of teams of like, hey, if you are super clear with us up front of what you want, we can move faster because now we have everything we need. If you don't give us everything you have in your head, you will waste time and your request will not be approved for build until you give us everything you need, right? So I think the dichotomy between like fast work and slow work is really a matter of like how your center of excellence is intaking requests and are you doing thorough scoping or not, right? And do your stakeholders understand the importance of thorough scoping? Because when you don't scope thoroughly, that time is just going to happen somewhere else. It's going to be the spinning the wheels on the build, right? So investing that time up front is a much better use. And the other thing, this sort of goes back to the training enablement piece. When you implement process, you have to tell people why you're doing it, right? Because people think you can stand up nurture in a week. Sure, with AI these days, you probably can do it in like 2 weeks, right? But you can't do it in like 3 days. It just doesn't work that way, right? And so explaining to people, hey, we are setting up this process for a reason because we want to do good work for you that is bulletproof, error-proof, helps you actually achieve your goals, is scalable, and all of these other great things. And we can't do it under the gun every time, right? Under the gun is only for emergencies, and like true emergencies, like the CMO said this is an emergency. Everything else, like, sort of has to just go through the process. And the more firm you are with people about the boundaries, people get better at it, right? Like there is it's not just training people. It's like, it is training people, but like, it's a cyclical effect, right? Because once they realize the boundaries are firm, they'll get better about it. And then things do start to move faster, right? And this is also where having sprints in your center of excellence really helps, because once the tickets are in for a sprint, you know what work is getting done, right? And then you have deadlines, and then you can definitely make sure you are meeting those deadlines. But also if stuff needs to move in the sprint, you're explaining to people why it's happening, right? So structure is good, process is good. And also, frankly, at a certain point, volume just needs to be corralled somehow, right? Like you cannot support a team of 10, 20 marketers and have them slacking you, emailing you, DMing you, all the things. Like all of that work has to be centralized in one place. And that's really what a center of excellence does well. And then you can start to t-shirt size requests. You can start to sprint plan. You can start to build out your email calendar. And what the center of excellence also does then is that you have a much better way to define if you need additional headcount or you need additional tools to meet that capacity, right? And I think in this new era, like meeting capacity is not just about like getting more headcounts. It's also like, you know, at allGood, we have Mary. She's an AI digital employee. Using something like that to also increase your capacity is also an option. So the center of excellence is sort of, all it's really doing is taking this wild, wild west and like corralling it into a place where then you can assess and more clearly understand the body of work that has to be done.
Yeah. My 2 cents there, it also helps us amazingly well of constantly evolving ourselves. When you set it up, it's not just for one setup and done.
Yes.
It's kind of learn from ongoing journey,
Yes.
including your mistakes.
Yes.
And you go and look back the things you have set up as part of your COE function.
Yes.
What changes you want to bring in, either in your briefing tablet or in or in your like basically that entire process, ever evolving, so that you get better as a team every day.
And I think so. Two great examples there. One is like your intake form, right? Your intake form should be constantly evolving because the types of campaigns and requests your marketers have is constantly evolving. If your intake form is not changing, you are not meeting the business where it needs to be. And the other thing is also, sprint planning is not something every new team should be doing, right? Sprint planning is something you evolve into doing. And that's another great example of evolving your COE function and how you are intaking work. And then also starting to maybe specialize out team members that address the different work. Starting to also then again leverage AI on specific pieces. So absolutely love that like, yes, your COE should be a living, breathing entity that moves with the organization.
So true. Okay, leading to operational empathy.
Yes.
Human side of ops.
Yes.
Right. Would love to know, how do you personally lead with empathy while still not losing the focus on driving results and bringing that back to the business?
Yeah. So to sort of reiterate something I was saying earlier, I really value, making friends and maybe putting it strongly, but just being a personable, likable person as often as possible, because when you have that relationship with people, it's much easier to hold boundaries and to explain what went wrong, why it went wrong, what needs to happen right the next time. Like, I don't want people to be fake, but just like, there are days all of us are grumpy and we're having a bad day. And it's just like, just being able to be conscious of that and like, maybe don't take it out on the poor marketer who has a question on you. Like, deep breath, take a walk around the block, and like, let's just try to show up as our best selves as often as possible. And then when I'm leading a team, it's really about, my job as a leader is to help people do their best work, right? And what is the best work is defined by what the organization needs and sort of then what my experience brings. But then from there, I want to make sure I'm always giving people leeway to do their best work and bring their ideas, right? Because just because I think it's a good idea does not mean I have I'm not the queen of good ideas and perfect ideas. I only have my little small subset of ideas. Everybody has ideas. And as long as they are in service of the goals that we have defined and they are in service of solving the problems we have to solve, I don't really care, right, of like how we get there. There are things I do care about, right, which is like the health of the system, the scalability of what we're bringing. But these are all very like higher order principles.
Yep.
The meat in the middle is very flexible of how to get there. And I think as managers, it took me a lot of time to be able to distinguish between what maybe bothers me about a person at a personal level versus what is an actual business problem, right? Just because somebody builds something in a specific way, maybe it bothers me because I think it's silly.
Yeah.
But if it kind of does the job and doesn't actually have any issues with it, you know what? That's fine. I just kind of got to swallow that and like deal with it because it's not really like, it's a me problem. It's not a professional business problem. And that sort of, I think as ops people, we're very type A and we have very strong ideas about how things should be. And in order for junior people to learn and for senior operators to do their best work, they need room to just like try all the ideas and room to explore and room to break things, right? Like something I tell a lot of people I manage is it's not a question of if you're going to make a mistake. It's a question of when you're going to make a mistake. And when that happens, all I care is that you've learned from it. and it doesn't happen again. I want to see different mistakes from people. I don't want to see the same mistake again and again, because that tells me you're not learning, right? And in this business, you have to be learning. So it's fine. It's going to happen. I'm going to there are times where I'm like, it's been a while since I made a dumb mistake. It's coming. I feel it like in the universe that it's just like my time is up. The clock is due. Something's going to happen. And just knowing that like, okay, great. That means I have to learn something from this and apply it to the next case.
That's the world we live in. Like everyone goes through so many different phase of life. We have gone through as a world through COVID, the layoffs, the current economic situation. Yes. There's always lots going on with everyone's personal life in the background. Any specific suggestion or tips you want to share on how to maintain the team morale and bring clarity during major transitions?
Yes. So when somebody makes a mistake or something happens, my first question to them is always like, hey, can you tell me what happened from your end, right? And actually, before even that is like, how are things going for you? What's going on right now? I want to just see like the full picture of their lives. And like, this is sort of, again, where I get back to like being friendly with people is I want to make sure I have a general pulse on people's lives, because it matters hugely to the work that they're doing, right? Like when we talk about work-life balance, balance looks different for different people. And some people need more flexibility in other areas than others in some areas. And then sometimes it's like last week, my whole family was sick. We were all dying. Nothing was happening, but like for that week, my team members held me up, right? And that means this week, great, I'm back. We're picking up all the pieces. We're doing good. And so if anything happened last week, it wasn't really like breathing down my neck about it wouldn't have done anyone any good, because like, there was really none. Like I was at my best, right? So understanding where people are in their lives, and then when something happens, sort of being like, hey, what happened here, right? Because then you get to see it from their perspective and how they saw the situation. And then that often helps you highlight the disconnect between what your expectations were as their leader and as their manager and what was going on in their brain, right? Because the minute you can identify where you two sort of diverge is often where that like learning opportunity, training opportunity, just like maybe a real clear conversation about like, I understand you had the best intentions, but like next time you need to double check with me. That sort of like understanding what happened in their head is really, really critical, and not just assuming that like, oh, they did this wrong because they're bad at their jobs. Nobody's like, everybody is trying their best, right? And their best just may look different day to day.
Yeah. No, it's like football team, right? Everyone's strengths are different.
Yes.
And the journey is about discovering what strength every individual holds.
Yes.
How do we give that support, that cushion to them for the areas where they need a bit of support, coaching, and mentoring? And how do we leverage the strengths they hold to scale up and capitalize on their potential?
Yes. And I think, so that's a really good point, right? So when you ask somebody to explain to you what happened, you can also start to see where their strengths and weaknesses are, right? Because hopefully you as a manager have managed multiple types of people. You've seen a little bit more of the world, hopefully. And over time, you'll pick up on like, oh, wait, yes, I as the manager did not set her up for success because I put her in a position that she would not have been, or like I gave her a task that was outside of her strength, outside of her skill level. And I also, like, as a manager, if you do that, because something you have to sometimes, right? It's letting people know in advance, hey, this is going to be a stretch for you. How can I support you, right? It's like, this is a learning opportunity. I'm not expecting you to do this really well. There was one poor consultant that I managed one time. There was just some high chaos going on. And I sat him down and I was like, listen, this is going to be really, really hard for the next month. Like, I am so sorry. Like, we're just sort of doing the best we can. The next month is going to suck. and like, I'm going to help you get through it. And later on, he told me, he was like, Alysha, that actually really, really helped. Because then when it was hard, I knew that you knew it was hard. And then I could ask for help and I knew what I was getting into. And then when it got better, it was like, okay, good. We're like, things technically went according to plan, because I told him the plan was not going to go according to plan.
Like, a lot of time that consideration, it's so thoughty.
Yeah.
For someone to be aware that there's a consideration. We know what they did go through it. You know.
Yes.
Work and what went up.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on, would love to know your journey and experience when it comes to turning your GTM goals into executable system. Like, how do you take any big go-to-market goals and turn into operational steps that actually drive the pipeline instead of getting lost in just day-to-day execution?
Yeah. So for those big goals, I'm a big believer in breaking things down into manageable chunks of work. So if the goal is, we got a 25% increase in pipeline, right? What are the different levers we can pull? What does each of those pulling those levers look like, right? Planning becomes really important. And this doesn't have to be a huge exercise, right? This could just be like the marketing team locks itself in a conference room for a day, but laying out what needs to happen so that way you have a chance to sort of like explore all the ideas as quickly as possible. And then from there, laying out what the exact steps need to look like for each of those things, right? Because once you know what you need to do, it's really easy to execute on the steps. But if you don't know what needs to happen, then everything becomes super, it's just harder and murky and confusing, and it's like a slog. And then also making sure that for whatever, let's say 25% pipeline growth, right? How are we actually measuring that, right? Because if nobody can agree on how to measure that, it doesn't actually matter what you do, because you won't get there, because nobody knows where there is, right?
Yes.
You have to agree on where there is. You have to agree on how you're going to measure it. And only from there can you sort of start to agree on how we're going to do it. And then it's just sort of like, you just got to do the work then.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, it's like create like solving a Lego piece, right? Like Lego piece puzzle. Like if you look at that bigger, right, it's very hard to imagine how you're gonna get there.
Yes.
So the moment you start breaking that down into smaller chunk and smaller pieces, it makes things so easy and convenient. Yes. It's all about that, breaking it down and plan it one piece at a time.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, so true. When it comes to building one reliable source of truth, right? These days, we all go through that challenge of breaking that your reports be consistent, your data telling one story rather than different stories at different times. How do you go about building that one reliable source of truth?
Yeah.
And if and when things goes wrong, are there any suggestions or tips you want to share where how do you diagnose when things goes wrong?
Yeah. So let's just take this separately, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of building a source of truth, a lot of this comes down to definitions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of when we say MQL, does everybody across the sales and marketing team and executive leadership agree on what an MQL is? Because if they don't, frankly does not matter what the data says at all, because everybody will swizzle it a different way, right? So it's not even what the numbers, the data points say, it's can we agree on common definitions, and can we document it, and can we sign off on it? And then from there, technically the data is not hard, right? It's like if job levels are job levels, right? But we as a business got to agree which ones are important. That's the harder piece, right? From there, it's then just, okay, then what data are we using? How clean is it? What are the different sources, et cetera, right? But those definitions, like that is where so many teams fall apart, because if you define it different, if different teams define it differently, they will pull their data differently, right? And that's kind of where it all falls apart. Then from the troubleshooting piece, we were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier of when people have problems, you kind of have to diagnose whether it is like a definitions problem, i.e. they don't understand what something is, or if it is an actual systems problem, right? Because those have very different approaches. A definitions problem is, all right, gotta maybe go back through training, enablement, or like, is this a wider spread definition problem that like we have to realign the business a little bit? Or is it a true systems issue that like we got to get into the technical weeds, right? So when you're troubleshooting, it's understanding where things are and like what kind of problem you have, and then going down from there, like what are the potential solutions?
Yeah. Anything in your journey which has helped you, especially when it comes to bringing alignments of the team on definition? Any? Because there's sometimes harder stuff, right? Like there is a campaign team or the strategy team, that the marketing ops team, and that there is sales team. How do you bring alignment to the common definition?
It's making sure you understand what everybody's incentives are, right? And what their goals are. Because marketing has one set of goals about MQL, sales has something else about MQLs, and your definitions need to work for everybody, right? And until you understand what all those different goals are, you can't build a definition that everybody feels good about, right? And then every definition is going to have trade-offs, right? About sometimes marketing will like it, sometimes sales will like it, either way. Documenting those trade-offs and being really clear with everybody about, hey, we are making these trade-offs. This is why we are making them, right? I think people really hate when things just exist for the sake of existing and it's kind of like a black box of things. When they understand the whys and the wherefores and like how this is in service of the business and like growing the business, things become a lot clearer to find the middle ground, right? Because fundamentally, we are at sales and marketing org. We are a revenue organization that is working to bring in more money for the business. That is everybody's top line goal. Doesn't matter how the rest of it like waterfalls down for us. That's what we all care about. And so treating that as your North Star when you're creating these definitions is, I found, the most successful approach.
Yeah, we oftentimes make that mistakes, try to create this black box.
Yes.
And just trying to focus on our why and our metrics and our incentive and our KPI. Yes. We start looking at that holistic lens. And very importantly, you mentioned kind of documenting it, what we through, so that the other party is also made aware that what we are accepting, and then it's a mutual thing.
Yeah.
Very interesting, very interesting. I think one last thing from me, prioritizing integrations. How do you decide which integrations are worth doing first? Are there any framework do you use to make sure every connections you build between multiple ecosystem or multiple tech stacks, which actually support the revenue goals and not just adding more work for them?
Yes. So this is a great point. You should not be plugging in things for the sake of plugging things in, right? And for each integration, I always like to go through a use case analysis of like, why are we doing this? What is it going to help us with? Is there enough volume to support this? All of those pieces, right? Because once you have an actual use case and you know the whys and the wherefores, like I say, it's very easy to sort of prioritize that, because the ones that'll have the biggest impact on revenue, that's what you're doing first. That's what you're working through. And then from there, it's sort of just the next most important one, right? And then also making sure sort of, I also like to add in a little bit of like, which will be the fastest to put together, because a lot like, I mean, we do have quarterly goals, we have monthly goals, like what is also like the fastest way we can help marketers and the most scalable way we can help marketers.
So true, so true. Yeah, I think what's the why there's that integration is required, how it's gonna go, how it's gonna impact or bring value towards the revenue value chain.
Mm-hmm.
And post that, how long it's gonna take
Yeah.
for us to build that integration,
Yeah.
right? Like that impact and effort analysis.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's you end up figuring it out at discovery when it comes to prioritization.
Yeah.
There are lower effort, high impact things. Yes. Versus working on higher effort, lower impact integration.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. So glad to have you, Alysha.
This is
Really excited to have all this amazing intel and insight, and especially from someone who has been through that entire journey, right? At times we have leaders on our interactions where they have been to very specific roles. Journey has been very inspiring, where you started being the executor and then last reaching to this advisory strategic role.
Yeah.
So amazing to have that insight and intel from you.
Amazing. Yeah, no, super enjoyed our conversation. And I hope people benefit from this.